Hello. Welcome to the introductory video of StarCraft Mass Recall. The goal of this video for me is to both familiarize newer players who don't know what this is with StarCraft Mass Recall, like the content and the concepts, as well as have one video covering all the topics so I don't have to talk about this every time I make a new gameplay video. And with that in mind, let's kind of jump into the basics. So Mass Recall is an independent mod project aimed at recreating all of the campaigns from both StarCraft 1 and its expansion Brood War inside the StarCraft 2 campaign editor. So basically it's using the mechanics of StarCraft 2, like the graphics and everything, but it's remaking the original campaigns. It consists of like two groups of 3 missions. The first part is from StarCraft 1 and it covers Rebel Yell, which is the first campaign, the Terran campaign. It goes on to Overmind, which is the Zerg campaign, and it ends with the Fall, which is the Protoss campaign. And then Brood War starts with the Stand, which is another Protoss campaign. Then you have Iron Fist, which is the Terran campaign, and it all ends in the final Zerg campaign called Queen of Blades. So it covers all of the content from StarCraft 1. Now, in addition to kind of recreating the missions with all of the scale, all of the objectives, triggers, and everything, the mod makers also imported all of the sounds from the original game, as well as the cinematics in its original form. I don't think these were upscaled, maybe they were, I'm not sure. And also, in the case where it's fitting, they remade the secret missions. Well, not secret, but mostly like the discarded missions. So these 2 missions, Biting the Bullet and Operation Silent Scream, were on the StarCraft 1 disc, but they were not playable inside the campaign selector, because I guess Blizzard just decided they weren't fit for production, and it shows. The mod makers did a great job remaking these missions, but the flow, especially for Biting the Bullet, is quite different from like the missions before and after it. It's much harder. The objectives and the whole mission plays very differently. I like it. I enjoy playing it, but I understand why it wasn't like fit for production. And so in most campaigns there's no such thing, but in Queen of Blades there is Dark Origin, which was actually a secret mission, and if memory serves, you had to beat the mission Reckoning with 5 minutes remaining or something, and then you got like Dark Origin, which story-wise it ties into StarCraft 2. I'm not gonna say more, we'll get to that hopefully, and then you'll see what I mean. So that's the base of Mass Recall, all of the campaigns from both StarCraft 1 and Mass Recall. There is another section inside the extras which has 3 more, let's say, campaigns inside of it, and so we'll go from left to right. There's Loomings, which I really like. Loomings is a prequel campaign to StarCraft 1, actually. It begins story-wise, it begins a few weeks before the events in StarCraft 1, and the final mission, Extermination, basically, as it ends, StarCraft 1 begins, because it ends with the destruction of the planet Chau Sara, where this takes place, and this is the first planet that the Zerg infested. And so this was the first time the Terran Confederacy confronted the Zerg officially, and it ends with the extermination of Chau Sara by the Protoss, which then leads into the first cutscene of the first Terran campaign. I like Loomings. It is going to be the first campaign that I play on this channel, and probably the next video you will see will be the first mission of Loomings. Moving on, we have the Stukov series. The Stukov series is also a mini campaign of only 5 missions centered around the character of Alexei Stukov from the Brood War campaign, specifically Iron Fist. And it follows his adventures after the conclusion of StarCraft Brood War. So after the conclusion of Brood War, these missions kind of take place. They are Zerg missions. And a fun tidbit of knowledge is that like these missions were not available in StarCraft 1. Originally, they were part of the Nintendo 64 version of StarCraft 1, which, I mean, this is a concept in and of itself. Yeah, StarCraft 1 was available on Nintendo 64 in whatever form it had, because, yeah. It's a console. It's a very early console. But yeah, you can. So these missions were part of that package in Nintendo 64. And finally, we come to the Enslavers campaign. This is not so much a remake as a reimagining of the original Enslavers mission pack. This mission pack was part of the StarCraft 1 disc, but it couldn't be found in like the campaigns section. You had to go to like the map editor and like the map selection, custom maps, you know, skirmish and stuff like this, and then you can find the Enslavers story. It takes place after the events of StarCraft 1. It was designed by Blizzard, but I guess they just decided it wasn't like good enough or something to actually officially release. And I will say that these missions are long, they are hard, sometimes they're tedious, but the story is pretty fun. I would not recommend playing this first. I would recommend playing this last. So once you've gone through all of the StarCraft missions and Loomings and Stukov series, then I would suggest you play Enslavers, because as you can see in the mission selection, there's a lot of missions. And some of them are split missions, depending on what you, for example, decide in Crossroads. Then you can either play this one or that one, or in this case, you can just play both. So that is the main content of Mass Recall. You also have like normally the credits for the people who did this. You have stats for all your missions. You can see like how long each campaign took you, what's the survival rate and stuff like this. You have the codex, which I really want to show, which is just kind of a codex, right? So every unit that you unlock in the game by playing the missions, you get some lore tidbits and some general information about this unit, which is pretty cool. And you get them for all the factions, all the characters, like the heroes, and all the planets unlock here. As you play, they will start unlocking. And then we have the options. So I would like to talk about the options a little bit. I'll try not to like take too long about, because I'm riffing on this. I don't have a script or anything. I just kind of talk about it like this. So there in the gameplay section, you have game speed and game difficulty. Difficulty levels in StarCraft 1, or the original game, do not exist. This game has like a sliding difficulty, so as you play the campaigns, the missions become more complex. There's more enemy types. The AI gets smarter, it gets faster, and it asks more of you. There are two kind of downsides, in my opinion, to this approach, and I think these gameplay difficulty levels fix this. So the first kind of downside is, as a new player, the game gets pretty hard pretty quick. So once you get like to the second part of the Zerg campaign, and especially once you enter the Protoss campaign, things get pretty hard. Protoss are a bit difficult to play for a new player. The game asks a lot of you. So like when I was a kid, I could never finish StarCraft 1, let alone play Brood War, because I just wasn't good enough to play the Fall. So it took me a lot of time to actually see the end of the game. If there was a difficulty option, I could have just set it to easy and just kind of learned how to play that way. Some people will not agree with me, and that's fine, but that's just what I think. So if you're new to this and you don't know much about the game, you can set it to easy difficulty. It's much easier than the original game, and it will help you kind of learn stuff. The normal difficulty tries to emulate kind of the middle of the pack StarCraft 1 difficulty. And because of the differences between StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 in like gameplay mechanics, it actually is easier than playing the original StarCraft 1 game. But it is kind of middle of the pack. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention one thing. So when Brood War released, the difficulty of Brood War immediately started at the end, at the same difficulty that the original game ends. So by the time you finished the Brood War campaign, you were somewhere above brutal difficulty from StarCraft 2. It was pretty hard. So yeah, I forgot to mention this. As far as difficulties, the hard difficulty is kind of designed for experienced players and takes into account everything that you have in the StarCraft 2 engine. So for example, in StarCraft 1, you have a limit of 12 units that you can control at any time. So even though you have like 50 units, you can only move 12 of them at a time. You have to create control groups if you want to do that. And so it's very hard to have like a big death ball. In StarCraft 2, that is not the case. In StarCraft 2, you can control every unit that you have in one control group at once, all selected, which makes playing races like Zerg a lot easier using the StarCraft 2 engine. And so in order to compensate for that, there is this hard difficulty. And also it fixes the second downside that I said that exists without difficulty options. And that is that, like, for experienced players, for replaying the campaign, replaying the Terran campaign and kind of the first part of the Zerg campaign, becomes very boring because it's too easy. It's just set to easy and you don't have any challenge. That's, for example, why a lot of people hate the third mission in the Terran campaign, Desperate Alliance, because it's a 30 minutes defense mission that you cannot finish earlier, and the enemies attack you like twice, 3 times in that period. If you set it on hard in Mass Recall, that definitely changes. The enemies will attack you a lot more frequently. They will have higher tier units, they will have mutas in your mineral line, and so you have to learn how to play it. And so I think the hard difficulty fixes this for like experienced players. You can just set it to hard and it becomes a challenge basically from the first mission, and then it gets harder and harder as you play the campaign, because the original difficulty is still baked into the mission design, which is like the difficulty was not based on like percentage numbers or something. It was based on like the upgrades of the enemies and the quality of units and stuff like this. Anyway, that's the difficulty options. If you are like new, I would set it to normal or to easy and just see how it feels. Game speed was something that was part of the original StarCraft 1 disc, the games. And it does help with difficulty as well. As you set the game speed lower and lower, both you and basically the whole game moves slower, which gives you more time to react. You can use the mouse, which is not recommended if you play on faster and hard. If you play on these 2 settings, you have to use the keybinds because it's just takes too long and too cumbersome to use the mouse. Anyway, like I said, like if you're new, just set it to normal and normal speed and see if it's too hard. Just go lower, both in the game speed and the difficulty, and I'm sure you will find your niche. There are also some other things like here, for example, Brood War tech. So with Brood War launched, each faction, so both the Terran, the Zerg, and the Protoss, received some new units, which were supposed to kind of shore up the weaknesses that they had in certain areas. For example, the Terrans got the medic, which helped a lot with like biological units survivability, because they would heal the Marines, which would then make Stim a lot more viable. Things like that, right? Every race got them. So if you turn on Brood War tech, it basically starts, maybe not from the first mission, but from the first few missions, you already have medics in your Terra campaign, which makes it easier. So it's easier to play hard. Also, hard was designed with this in mind. So hard is designed with you turning on Brood War tech and both you and the enemy having them. Here you can turn on the hidden missions, which I mentioned, which is like Biting the Bullet and Operation Silent Scream. You can set the new Gettysburg tile set, which is just one mission, the 9th mission in the first campaign, to like a city tile set instead of a space platform that it was in the original game. You can have the map zoomed in when you play installation missions. You can turn on cinematics, and then the interludes here determines like, pre-briefing interludes, either from like Brood War or StarCraft Remastered or Mass Recall, whatever you want. In the interface section, there's a few things that cover here. You can set the console, which is basically just the part of the screen where your like all the information are, either to classic StarCraft Remastered, StarCraft 2, unique to each faction. You can have like heroes say when they're damaged, the heroes having their nameplates above their heads. You can have static transmissions, which I like, which is kind of, all the mission briefings are a little bit like fuzzy. You can hide the unit count, kill count if it's 0, and then for pop-ups, it's basically like the codex. Each time you start a new mission and you get introduced with the new unit, it'll kind of pop up on the side and tell you about it. I just turn it off because I know all that stuff. In the visual sections, you can have like the terrain effects showing like when the structure was destroyed, where there was a burning wreckage, or where a nuke fell. It would be like permanently charred. The ground would be permanently charred. You can also set weather effects if you want. I don't like setting those because they kind of mess with the performance. The menu backgrounds are basically just what you're seeing here, so I have stars and that's why you see stars. Now custom models is interesting. Custom models makes each faction in the game have kind of different like colors and models, right? So these two cover StarCraft 1, Stars of Cold Harl from the original game, UED is from Brood War, then you have like for the Renegade Zerg, the Jorgmund Brood, this is like the Zerg ones, and these are for the Protoss. I suggest turning them on. It makes the game a lot more visually distinct because they like really look different from your units. In the audio section, you can just have additional music, additional dialogue, classic sounds, yes or no for buildings, abilities, and weapons, and then you can set the music preference. As you can see, for me, the music preference is Brood War music, so everything you hear in the background is the music from the Brood War soundtrack. You can set it to StarCraft 2, or you can just mix it and match it however you feel. I like this, but you can set whatever you want. In the voices section, for each unit from all the factions, you can either set all of the Brood War their voice lines, or all of the StarCraft 2 voice lines, or you can like mix and match. You can put some of them to, if it's clicked, if it's like checkmarked, then it's Brood War. If it's unchecked, then it's StarCraft 2. I set it to this because I'm just used to playing it like this. I prefer it like this, and especially for like this column, which is the Zerg. If you play with original Zerg voice lines, it will sound like the original StarCraft 1 voice lines, which is, to put it lightly, it's just a bunch of wet fart sounds underpinning everything that they say, and I really don't like this. So I set it to this. You can play around with this however you want, but these are my selections, right? The same goes for models, which is like how your units look. I set them all to Brood War because the modders did a really good job with these models. They look very much like these models would look in the StarCraft 2 engine. And so I play with these. But you can also mix and match however you want. And finally, in like the evolution chamber is like the biggest changes to gameplay that the modders came up with, which is all of the heroes like Raynor and Kerrigan have extra abilities, they look different, they have extra banter, and then for the installation maps, you can play them in third-person mode. This is a little janky, but it is fun to try. There's only a few installation missions, right? There's just like episode 4 in Rebel Yell and episode 5 in the Overmind, which is the Zerg campaign. You can try it. I'll try it when I record the videos. I'll try to record both versions and see what people think. And at the end, you have authorized the use of psi emitters. This is like an end game difficulty, which tries to like offer a real challenge for anybody who has really mastered playing Mass Recall. But this is so tedious, so hard, so oppressive that it really makes for bad video content because I only get to use specific units. I have to play in this very specific way. There's a lot of reloading, like save scumming missions, so I turn it off. This is harder than StarCraft 2 Nightmare, the mod that Grant created, so I would be very wary of using this. But you can try it if you want. So yeah, that's everything that I wanted to cover about Mass Recall. Yeah, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I hope you want to try StarCraft Mass Recall. Oh, and by the way, StarCraft Mass Recall, just Google StarCraft Mass Recall and it will take you to their official page where you can download the mod. You do need to have StarCraft 2, the base kind of game, which is free to play anyway on Blizzard Battle.net, so you don't have to pay anything. You just download StarCraft 2 and you get like the first Terran campaign, Wings of Liberty, which a lot of people will consider the best of all the StarCraft 2 campaigns. You get multiplayer, you get the custom campaign editor, you get custom campaigns, everything, and then after you installed it, then you can install Mass Recall on top of StarCraft 2, but it does have its own launcher. this is not launched. So when I launch this, I don't launch StarCraft 2, I launch Mass Recall. However, if you ever want to get into the options from StarCraft 2, the base options, all you have to do is just press escape. And you will actually end up, you can set all your graphics, all your sound, mouse and keyboard settings, everything, the hotkeys as well. You can set it all from this screen. You just press escape and you will come here. Because if you go to these options are specific for Mass Recall. Anyway, that is it. Thank you for watching. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the missions that you will see, the rest of the videos that you will see in this playlist. So yeah. That's it for now. Bye.